Hello and welcome to Roundtable. In today's chat, we'll be joined by All Things Considered Theatre Company and Time Matters UK to discuss new show 8 Hours There and Back, shining a light on the 300,000 UK children with a lived experience of parental imprisonment. Over the next half an hour, we're going to take a deep dive into how the show was created and why. We're also going to find out a bit more about Time Matters UK and have a think about why theatre is a good medium for this kind of conversation. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sarah Hogarth, co-writer and co-director of 8 Hours There and Back, Adebola Olayinka, cast member of 8 Hours There and Back, Lorna Brooks, founder of Time Matters UK and senior lecturer at John Moores University, and Janine Davies, a Time Matters UK mentor with professional and lived experience of parental imprisonment. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to jump straight in and ask you, Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about the show 8 Hours There and Back and how it came to be?
So it all started with Emma Bramley, who's the other director of the company. She was watching the news, and on the news there was a segment and there was these accents that she kind of recognised, so she kind of zoned in a little bit more. And it was young people from Lorna's organisation, Time Matters, and they were speaking at the Houses of Parliament. Was it?
Yeah, that's right.
They were speaking in the Houses of Parliament about the things that they felt passionate about having a family member in prison and the things that they felt that needed to be changed. And she was struck by how kind of articulate these young people were, and also by what they were talking about and what they wanted to change. It kind of connected with her. Emma also has her own personal story. So when she was in her 20s, after her father had passed away, she found out that he'd actually been in prison before she was born. So she felt this kind of instant connection to these young people and these stories. And she wants to find out more. So she contacted you, didn't she, Lorna?
She did.
And that's how we kind of made that connection.
Yeah. She just rang me and just said, I've seen the news. Those kids are amazing. How articulate. I was really touched. And I run this theatre company. We do kind of politically driven theatre. Can we meet for a coffee? And it just went from there. I got to see some of the other shows that she put on, which were amazing. So I knew already we were in safe hands. And yeah, we just talked about just the medium of theatre and how this could potentially safely tell these kids' stories and hopefully raise awareness and just make some changes. It was exciting. I just felt an instant connection to Emma, from the start really, and then obviously I got to meet you, and it's just all gone from there really.
Amazing. And so how did you end up developing the script and choose the stories that ended up kind of resulting in the end show?
So we did an initial workshop. It was actually here at the Unity. We did a workshop with young people that Lorna invited for us to come along, and we did like a drama workshop that spanned over an hour and a half, and we just set up a mic in the middle of the room and we just got talking about stuff through different exercises, and from that we kind of realised what the young people wanted to say and what was important to them. And a lot of things that came through for us from that session was, again, keep using this word articulate, but they're very articulate at explaining what has happened to them and understanding what's happened to them and how they feel about what has happened to them. So the material that we gathered was just brilliant in those terms. Also for us, coming through that was this sense of being kind of let down by the adults and the services around them, and we felt like a strong connection to that as a theme that was running through, and anger, but I'm never sure whether it was anger from them or we felt angry for them. So but there's kind of works on both levels. So after that we structured what we wanted, we thought was important in this timeline of events, this story of young people, and we went back and we pinpointed and we did some more interviews with some young people, and they were done over Zoom because of what was happening in this country. So we picked up on stories with young people through Lorna, and that's how we gathered the information. So that went down to like more interviews. So more of an interview situation. And something we learned really, really early on is that you don't, there's a question about questions they get asked and questions that they really, really hate. That kind of guided the questions that we asked them. So we kind of made sure that we didn't ask those questions, but also that's highlighted in the performance. So that's something that we hope people will go away with knowing, don't ask me these questions, don't ask me things like what did they do or how long did they get, because that doesn't feel genuine to me or authentic, and it doesn't show that you really care about me. It shows that you're interested in like the drama of it almost, that kind of information of it. So the piece really does pick up on it's less about this is my story and this is what happened to me, although there's little fragments of that. It's more about these are the things that we want to change. This is the things that we think could be done better by the services and in particularly by the press. So that's kind of what we unpick within the performance.
Definitely. And Adebola, how did you come to be involved? Obviously you're a performer in the show. How does that feel, kind of sharing this story and having that responsibility?
I mean, it's exciting. It's a very big responsibility, I believe, to have. But I believe that the theatre company and my other fellow actors were doing it such a good justice that I believe that, because it goes down to little things like when we like, because I'm from London, so hearing some of the way that they speak, it's like, I find it hard, and it's like we can't change the words because it's their words. But how I got onto it was I just finished drama school, and there was just one of my drama teachers, Yusuf, just came and said that there's this All Things Considered theatre company, and they're about to write this play about prison. So I've got similar lived experience, not the same lived experience as the play, but similar lived experience. So he was like, you should go and send them an email, just let them know that you're interested. So then I popped them an email, but this is when you guys were doing pre-production for your other show. So I was like, hi, I would like that. We're thinking of doing it, but we've not written a script or anything, but we'll get back to you. So it was just a waiting matter from there. And then that's when Sarah and Emma messaged me and it was like, yeah, get me on Zoom. And then we just had a conversation and just sort of like what I thought about the subject and everything. And then it just moved on from there.
It did really, because when we just had a chat with him and we instantly loved him and we were like, he's perfect for this. And we watched your show reel and we were like, he's got that vulnerability and his story is, so his own lived experience was really important as well. And we just knew he was perfect, and he has been perfect.
And I actually do remember Emma either ringing me or texting me on when we found our first actor. He's brilliant. You're going to absolutely love him. And I was like, I trust your judgment entirely. So
amazing.
Yeah.
We've looked out with the cast. We've got a really good, strong cast.
That's
There's
great.
2 lads and a girl, and they're really brilliant.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it sounds like it's a really kind of collaborative piece from like the research stage to the end performance. So can you tell us a little bit more about Time Matters UK, about the organisation, both of your roles within the organisation, but also then kind of how you've gone on the journey with Emma and Sarah, maybe?
Yeah. Well, Time Matters UK is basically an organisation that is just set up to help a child or children with parents in prison. So that can be either mum in prison or dad in prison. It could be at the stage when they're currently away. It could be after they've been released. It could even be to help the children when the parent's been arrested and a custodial sentence looks possible. So just providing community-based support, bringing children together, helping them to realise they're not the only child in this position, giving them a safe space to talk about, general challenges that these children might face, such as prison visits or not having any contact at all, or other kids not saying very nice things. Or even like the crime being publicised in the press and how that affects them. So that's basically our mission as an organisation, just to provide kids with a safe, non-judgmental space, but also like loads of fun.
Yes.
Because kids need to have fun, and it's about building up their self-esteem, about making sure they have loads of positive life experiences, and most importantly about making sure that they realise that they have got huge potential, and whatever choices their parents have made is not not necessarily their choice or their life path, and they can be anything that they want to be. And my goal always for the young people is for them to hold their heads up high and achieve whatever their particular goal is in life. So it's everyone, when I explain what I do, people go, oh, that must be so sad, and I'm like, I have the best time with these young people. They teach me so much. They're so articulate. They're so clever. They've got so many talents. They're really funny. And actually we just have we all went out for dinner, didn't we, the other day? And it's just, it's lovely. Yeah. It's a privilege work. And I get to meet like amazing volunteers, people. Janine rang me and said, I saw an article about your organisation in the Echo. I like the idea of what you do. Can I volunteer? And then I get to work with amazing people like Janine. So I'm going to pass straight on to you.
So I read
throwing the baton over.
So I read an article and I was like, I reached out to Lorna, and then we realised we'd met a few years before when I worked in the community. So I've worked in prison and outside of prison supporting offenders for like best part of a decade, but also have lived experience of a parent in prison growing up. And when I met Lorna years ago, I really wanted to get involved from my perspective to kind of help other kids know they're not alone. Yeah. I felt very alone. I had siblings, but that was it. I didn't know any other children going through it, and we were publicised in the press, so they knew our address as soon as the offence was kind of announced and the person had been sentenced. So we had quite a lot to deal with growing up, and I think Lorna's organisation is so good. It gives a place for people and young people to have like something outside of the family and to talk about that in a safe environment, because you can't always talk about that with your mum or whoever's left behind, because it's so strained and there's a lot of mixed emotions, and you might be sad, you might miss them and then feel guilty and angry at the same time. And Lorna's organisation is so looks at that so well with all the different skills that people bring. There's Billy, who's a youth worker, and he brings loads of fun. Yeah. And then you've got different age ranges of the mentors as well. Like this was way back when I was a child. I'm in my 30s now, but I've still kept that with me my whole life, wanting to get back involved and do this kind of work. And we do like one-to-one support, so it could be over Zoom or in person with a young person. And it might not be anything to do with the reason they're in touch with the organisation. They might want, to look at bullying or substances or peer pressure at school, and it can be literally, it's so holistic in the approach we take, and I think that's what makes it unique. It's not like putting everyone in the same box, like you've got this shared experience. It's like, what do you want and what do you want to get out of this? And all the kids talk about how like they've met other people, that everyone's been so welcoming and they look out for each other, and we've done some days in person and stuff, and it's so nice to see that, and that they realise they're not alone.
I've got to say, from being
feels like a family, doesn't it?
From being on the outside.
No, go on. No, that's it. That was my only comment. It feels like a family. Back to you.
Just being on the outside and looking in and speaking to the young people, the love that they have for the organisation and how they feel like it's changed their lives. And there's even a line in the play, and I think you say it, Viola. It's about we don't just want any art club. We want an art club that talks about our stuff, and that's what you've kind of given to them. Is there a place? Instead of being tagged onto other services, it was like somewhere where we actually can talk about the things that, that we're going through, and we'll all understand because we're all going through it. It's so important.
Definitely.
But they all say like but one of our questions was, I know it's weird, but is there anything positive to come out of this? And they all say, meeting Lorna.
Oh, well,
the Time Matters organisation, they all
so
said
nice.
that's the if I'm going to take a positive from that's it.
Oh, that's just
it's amazing. It's so isolating. When I was growing up, there was nothing, there was no support services, and you just go through that really, really scary experience, really going to visit prison for the first time, and no one really explaining that to you or anything. Like having a service like this to talk about that and share your experience with someone else, and how did you deal with that, or how were you feeling on that first day?
Definitely.
It's invaluable.
Definitely. So I have to say, I until kind of this show kind of came to me, and I was reading, like, that statistic, over 300,000 children in the UK are impacted by parental imprisonment.
That we know about.
Yeah, that's just that we know. And, I felt quite naive to that. And I think when I think about prison and the stories that are told about prison on TV and film, they are always adult perspective. And I actually kind of ignorantly had never considered those really left behind beyond those kind of small snippets in films where there's visitation scenes and they only last for a moment. I'd never really considered it. So, I think as well as the kind of pastoral support and mentoring that you're given, the awareness raising is just remarkable, really. Definitely.
We did Lorna was speaking at like a global event, weren't you? That I can't remember the title of it.
So I'm on like an international forum where we speak to young people impacted from all around the globe. It was the INSIP conference this year. So we had young people from Canada, America, Africa, just all over the world coming online for, like, it's called International Coalition of Children of Incarcerated Parents, which is a bit of a mouthful, but like I'm on the board for that. And yeah, that was just a global forum where we're bringing shared perspectives.
But me and Emma came, we logged on and we saw some of the speakers, and it was just amazing that obviously every country has their own things, culturally, socially, economically, but the children and the young people were all kind of saying the same thing, which is never is from our perspective and our human rights, where are they taken into consideration? Because when a prisoner does something wrong and you can't have a visit, it's not just like the prisoner who's being punished, it's the child, and they'll find that out just when they're at the visit. They've come all that way, and it's like, oh no, you're not going to see.
And you're treated like an adult in a child's perspective. You go in and you're searched the same way, and no one really explains that to you, and you're treated like you are over 18.
Wow.
And nothing's really explained in that way, and I completely agree with that. I think that a lot needs to change. I think when a person goes to prison, all the focus is on that person and rehabilitating that person, but what about all the pieces left behind? And really making that jigsaw fit back together again, and supporting those people that are still keeping things ticking along while that person's been taken out of that environment.
Definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's just I think one of the reasons why I think our project works is because it's a choice. It's a voluntary project. It's not support that's forced upon children. So it's very kind of, we make ourselves available, we make ourselves known, and they can come if they want, and if they don't want to, that's totally fine. So what I don't want is kind of to see going forwards is forced, identification of children without their consent. So yeah, that's a whole rant for another time, but but yeah, I think it should be. I think what we need to do is create awareness, training, and we need to create cultures of compassion within society, within our schools or within our environments, where children feel if they want to share the information that they've got a family member in prison, that they can come forward and share that, and it will be handled well, rather than their information being shared amongst professionals without their consent, because I don't think that should happen unless there's a serious safeguarding concern, which is a different story.
I completely agree, and particularly the press, you mentioned it before, when my parent went to prison, it was publicised where we lived, and then our neighbours, when we had to move, when they realised he was coming out of prison, then they realised we had a parent in prison, they were like, oh no, you can't play with those kids anymore. Exactly. And then the knock-on effect from that, and you don't really understand that. And there's so many other layers that aren't looked at from that perspective. They just see it as like, oh, it's another one behind bars from the press perspective, but actually the knock-on effect for that community and that family particularly isn't really addressed or even considered.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is something with the audience coming to see the performance, that's something that they can do. That's something you can say, you can talk about it and say, this is not right, we shouldn't be doing this, and we buy into it as well, looking at like these clickbait titles that lead us into the next kind of headline, the next one, and finding out where people, it's just information that doesn't need to be in
it's of no benefit actually at all. People say, oh, we need to know where these offenders live, and you don't. If somebody's offended and they've gone to prison, that's dealt with. All you're doing is further punishing and stigmatising a family, and actually making a child and a partner, a wife, whoever is living in that family home, potentially unsafe from community backlash for a crime that they didn't commit. So that has to change.
Completely agree. I think culturally as well, I think we have in this country particularly, when the person going to prison has done the offence, that is their punishment. But then we're further punishing, like you said, other people. I think what's great as well about Lorna's organisation is that all the kids there have got very different experiences of visiting prison. Some have never visited prison, some don't want to see their parent, and that's okay. Some do, some can't for safety issues, and I think that's really important, that we see one perspective and think, you might think that all the other kids are going to see their parents, why can't I see mine? And I think that's why it's so valuable to realise you're not alone with that, and everyone's experience is different.
Exactly.
And it's okay, and you might want to go 1 week and not the next.
You can change your mind.
And I did that, and I felt very guilty for doing that. I chose not to go 1 week, and I cried because I felt then guilty that I should have gone, and my siblings went, but I had my own reasons why I didn't. But there was no one to talk to about that, and I felt that guilt for a long time.
Yeah, to allow you to go, it's okay. It's not your, if you don't want to go on a visit, that's okay. You're a child, you should be allowed to just chill out and watch the TV sometimes, or go to, a football club, or, and I know that a lot of our children do harbour guilt if they absolutely want to support the person inside, and they will care about them, but they also sometimes want to do other things, or they might, for whatever reason, but that guilt, I think, is a really common burden.
And I think it makes you sad when you leave, because you've got no control over that. Like, you go and see your loved one, and as you're leaving, everyone's crying, it's painful, you're almost like torn away again, and it kind of reminds you of, like, you're traumatizing yourself every single time. And I think that's overlooked massively, and that you want the good side of being able to see that person, but then when you have to leave,
it's hard.
You're reminded again that you have no control over that.
Yeah, and that's why I think children, when they're involved in services, bar those ones where there's serious safeguarding concerns and everybody has to share that information, that is something that they should be in control of. They should be in control of how their data, and the big overriding thing that came from the conference was, and I almost want it to be a slogan for Time Matters going forward, is sharing our own stories, in our own way, in our own time. There's not a right time or way to share your story of parental imprisonment with your teachers, with your peers, with your community. It's in your own time, in your own way, because so much other control is taken.
Would you say, with that in mind, that the children and the young people that we spoke to, were they a bit further along with their journeys? Were they?
Yes.
They were mostly reflecting back,
They were reflecting back. Because I would say probably children that are brand new to the service probably wouldn't have been the ones who would have been ready to have been involved in an interview for the play. if it's just happened that your parent's gone away, or you've just come to us and you're in that shock and trauma state, talking to with all due respect to theatre producer about your experiences, they're not ready. Whereas the young people that you interviewed will have had been to a lot of support groups, had a lot of time to process their feelings, thought what is right for them, and they were old enough and they were able to actively consent to, I'm comfortable being in this interview. Because they were
that's the definite kind of sense we got from the interviews, was that they'd processed.
They're owning it, aren't they? They're owning that story. And I definitely agree with that. It took me years to be able to talk about it or reflect on it, or actually realise that was not a normal thing probably to have gone through. When you're going through it, you don't really I wouldn't have known how to explain how I felt or what I was feeling. You're so confused for so long, and it's a mishmash every single day. So only as I got older could I then reflect on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Because so how does it feel then to have this platform to share this story? Because it does feel like it is partly untold to an everyday audience, which is, hopefully the kind of people that we want to reach with this show, not just kind of your average theatre audience, so to speak, but also educators, like you were saying, charity members, potentially like politicians, people who can impact real change. And, how does that feel, like having this platform, this opportunity in a theatre to share that story?
I mean, it is amazing, and I hope the young people, they think it's amazing, and I do hope we create some change. And I think the biggest thing that we're doing that will help with that is that on the Friday matinee, we've invited teachers, we've invited social workers, we've invited journalists, we've invited those professions also in training. So teacher trainers, teachers, people who are training in broadcasting, and people who are training in social work. And we hope it's those people in those early stages of their training, when they're listening to the stories of the young people and the things that they've experienced and how this could be changed, that maybe they take that forward into their careers, and they go, or if they're in their career, they go, well, maybe I could have handled that a little bit differently. What's our policy in the school actually about this? We need to talk about how we treat our children in our schools who are in this situation. So I think really hope that really works, especially for the young people. And I think actually it's the young people who are creating this legacy, because it's them coming forward, being on that news programme and doing all the work that they're doing with Lorna anyway, that this is just another outlet, isn't it? Another opportunity, because you do so much to tell these stories again. And I'm just hoping in the audience there's people who don't, they probably won't know. I didn't know the stuff that I know now. And like, you know, it's grabbed my heart, and I'm sure it will grab the people in the audience's hearts the way live theatre does, and that they do want to walk out of here and go, do you know what? And talk about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Plant the seed, isn't it?
Yeah,
if we can plant the seed of compassion and kindness to maybe use a different perspective in future, or even challenge people when we see people say certain things, then you can only do what you can do, can't you? At least it's putting that ripple out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
And what I love about it is that we have, I like in Time Matters that children are a victim of this experience. They're a victim of a crime they didn't commit, but we absolutely do not position these kids as victims. I don't want them to go through life feeling like they're a victim. We recognise that this is trauma, but what we position them as you know, not only kids that can thrive and do amazing things, but if they want to help us make positive changes, use that lived experience to make positive changes, not just for within their own lives and families, but for children they might never meet, we'll give you the opportunity to do that. So this is, you know, we call them change makers, our young people that get involved in projects like this, and you know, it's empowering for them, you know, hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, even if it just changes one of the child's lives somewhere down the line, that's got to be something for those kids' self-esteem.
There's one of your participants who does, and that kind of that. Is it you again who says no? You don't say this, do you?
I haven't even
I know the lines.
But there's a bit that when we were interviewing one of your participants, and I don't want to say their name, but they've spoken a lot at Westminster, and they say, you know, sometimes I get nervous talking to these big crowds of people, but I say to myself, you know, it's not for me, it's for all those other little kids out there, like the other young people whose lives I'm going to have an impact on.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's so powerful, isn't it? Laura and I are really passionate about as well this attitude that if you grow up in an offender's household, you will become an offender, and that just isn't true. I'm living proof of that myself, and completely flip reverse that. And I think to inspire other children that you are not defined by your parents' decisions or lack of ability to make decisions, and you can go on and be anything you want to be. And I think that's missed out a lot. There's a lot of statistics thrown around, like we were saying before, about in services, and that just it just isn't true.
No, it just isn't. There's awful statistics being bandied around that's saying, you know, children are more likely to offend if their parents offend, and actually there's no current research evidence to back that up. And even if there was, I don't think we should be keep highlighting this over and over again, because all we're doing is pathologising the children, saying your dad's an offender, so statistically you're probably going to follow suit, is the absolute opposite of what we're trying to do in terms of reduce stigma and shame.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it, though? If you get told that, I'm a naughty child, I'm going to behave like a naughty child. And I used my experience positively and used that lived experience and went on to support other people with Laura's organisation and in other organisations to overcome that and using that experience for good. It took me a long time to get there. I never really realised how I could use it in that way. I never thought I'd end up working in that field at all. I wanted nothing to do with it when I'd lived through it, but actually started volunteering in lots of different places and realised I actually quite enjoy this. And it's so, like Lorna was saying, it's not sad at all. I get so much inspiration from the young people. It's healing for me as well, being able to give back.
What did you think when we met the young people? What was your
They were brilliant, you know. They were just so funny because
they are funny.
They are so funny. I think if you're not aware of this subject, I think you go into it thinking that I think as someone from the outside, you go into it thinking this is awkward, but the fact that we was reading the script and all of that, it got me to that knowledge where it's like, oh my God, when we see these kids, it's not just about their parents being they live their own life. What their parents have done has got nothing to do with them. And when we was there, it was just normal conversations. It was just so funny. There was what's the little boy with the Chucky doll?
He's really funny. He's obsessed with horror.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
We won't do names, but one of our kids came in carrying literally the Chucky doll, and we were like, "That's genius."
And it's just brilliant that majority of the questions that the kids had for us was just things about the industry, how did you get into acting? What other things have you been in? Stuff like that. And it's just so exciting to just have conversations like that with them.
They loved it.
It was just it was so brilliant. And it's some of the kids were happy to bring it up themselves about their lived experience, but it wasn't can you tell me about what's going on? Because that's what it that's just what it shouldn't be. And like, just us having this conversation reminds me of when I was in secondary school, because I think me growing up in the area that I grew up, I think a lot of my friends was parents, not a lot of them, but there was quite a lot of my friends who had parents that was incarcerated. But as in us growing up in an area, no one ever saw it as a big deal. But I remember us going into secondary school, and I remember like my friends used to get, like they just used to get like, just the teachers used to just move so weird around them. It's just like, oh, this, that. And then it's even things like, it's like, I remember one of my friends was talking about it last week when I called him. I said, I'm doing this play. And then he was saying, he remembers the time when he was in year 9 and the teachers literally, when they found out, they forced him to go in the office to discuss it with them. And then he was like, what do I need to, like, he was like, back then, obviously I just said it, but we was both there on the phone like, what do they even need to know about it for? And then just reading the script, because there's a bit when it talks about teachers going on to gossip it to other teachers and stuff like that, and it just like, that's probably what it would have been in it. It's literally just staff room conversation. It just should not be like that.
Exactly.
It seems really important to get this in front of educators for that reason, and
definitely,
you know, it's really inspiring to hear the different approaches.
And I'm sure there's some teachers out there doing, and they will be doing amazing jobs, and we need to learn from them.
Yeah,
That's the thing,
definitely.
we need to learn
it's like
from what they're doing, and loads of professionals. But it's just, I think it's a particular thing, isn't it? And it's like, it needs to be looked at as a particular thing, and not
just getting people to think about what are your own biases, what are your influences from you know, these horrible statistics that have been bandied about. Do you need to share that information? You can't just say, well, I need to share it for safeguarding purposes, and just say the word safeguarding like it's an excuse for you to share that information.
Well, rather than just asking,
there probably isn't a safeguarding reason, actually.
Or rather than asking what was the offence and how long were they in for, why don't you ask, how do you feel about it? What was your experience? Asking it about them, not making it about the parent.
Definitely.
Like, even changing that terminology could go a long way in helping the young people feel heard.
Well, we had a young person who, you know, whose mother was imprisoned, and she was having a difficult time in school. I can't remember whether it was bad behaviour or what. When she was in primary school still, and she said that a teacher said to her, "Now, come on, you need to behave. You don't want to end up like your mum, do you?" And that's the kind of thing that we have to change. And she probably felt that was a motivating talk, but
it's not.
it's not. That's so true.
Definitely. And you know, these are the kind of things that, you know, to an extent that didn't surprise me, but it did shock me at the same time, because I can imagine how easily that will have rolled off somebody's tongue, that sentiment. But it is so shocking to deliver that to somebody going through that. And I think, you know, that's kind of the important thing about this play is you'll be sharing those small things that, you know, to that teacher it sounded like a singular sentence, but actually that's very the lasting impact of that.
There's also another undertone there. It's almost like that's also saying that parent's bad by being in prison. Just because someone's gone to prison doesn't mean they're a bad parent. They've made bad decisions, but they are still capable of being a loving parent.
100%.
And that is never discussed. It's almost like they're just bad people.
100%.
And it's not that. It made bad decisions.
Definitely. So if you could kind of summarise, difficult question, one thing really that you want audiences to take away from this, what is it that you'd want them to kind of leave? Is it that you'd want them to go away and research more, change about themselves, or even just an understanding?
Just that these kids are not the world's future offenders. They are capable as thriving as much as any other kids, and just think about very carefully about whose information is it, and just, I think, let the children come to you in their own time and in their own way.
Definitely.
Go to somebody else. There's so much. There's so much.
There's so much. The journalists, particularly from my own experience, take heed of what the young people are kind of getting across here, but also compassion and empathy from everyone, from every perspective. That actually empathy and actually understand what that word means. But when you're delivering something or asking a question, think about yourself in that other person's shoes. Like actually, before you deliver that, and then we might go a little bit further with how we can support young people.
Definitely.
Totally agree.
Definitely. Is there anything from the theatre maker's perspective that, because obviously as a theatre maker you'll have considered the audience kind of, and who will be on that front row, if you could shout it to anybody, this story and these, you know, young people's stories?
I just hope we do them justice, because I just really hope And every word that's in it is theirs. There's very little that's been changed. Obviously, for theatrical devices of storytelling, there's odd words that are in there and framing devices, but all the words are theirs, and we've really been careful about what we've selected and really listened to kind of what they've been trying to tell us and trying to say to us. And I think for me, it's what Lorna said. If the people could just walk away thinking, not stigmatizing and putting people in the same kind of category as their parents or a family member, and thinking, do you know what, just changing our prejudices and going, actually, I do judge, I do think that, and going, actually, these kids are amazing, they're just like my kids.
Yeah,
exactly.
Treat them the same and empowering them to be anything they want to be.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. And is there anything else anyone would like to kind of discuss or share around the show?
I would say what I would want people to get from the show is, first thing is to understand that a subject like this, we should not shy away from speaking of it. But also when touching on subjects like this, we're not touching on it to, we should feel sorry because their parent is away.
Yeah.
It's we can talk about the situation, but we don't actually need to mention the parent being away, because it's not about the parent being away. It's actually about how the child themselves is getting through it and stuff, how it's affecting them. Not even about how they are getting through it because their parent away. It's how they're getting through it because of the way like the world sees them, the way society sees them and stuff like that. So I think it's a big point for people to go away and think it's deeper than what we read in the media. It's absolutely deeper than that.
And
Definitely.
the performance doesn't look at the lives of the prisoners. It's not about that at all. It's kind of, you know, what you were saying a little bit earlier. It's about them, and how you've just said, Bola, brilliantly. Like it's about them and
how amazing
their
to give.
lives.
And you're saying before you've hardly changed anything. Like how empowering for them. Probably the first ever that I've come across of something being put on its platform of just their voices and their experience, not through another lens.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
no, not at all.
Well, I am totally inspired and impressed by the way you're all using your kind of different positions within all of this to tell these stories. You know, your kind of trained performance, and you'll be out there every night in front of an audience sharing this story. You know, your giving back and your mentoring is just remarkable. And the role of Time Matters UK, what an incredible organisation. And, you know, I would implore everybody to go away and get on the website and find out more. I want to. And
Donate.
We'll put a link to that at the end of this. Absolutely put a link to that at the end of this. And obviously, you know, how it's all come together through theatre and telling this story that, you know, like we've discussed today, is often told from the complete wrong perspective, if told at all. So, you know, big kind of thanks to you all, and well done, and best of luck for the rest of it, I think. I'm now going to try and do that thing where I kind of sell when it's on. You ready? So, 8 Hours There and Back is on world premiere at Unity Theatre on Friday the 4th and Saturday the 5th of February. As has been explained, there is a teacher training event which is for teachers, journalists, any educators and charities that may benefit from a deeper understanding of what these young people go through, and that'll be taking place on Friday afternoon. All information about the production, about Time Matters UK, and how you can get involved in raising awareness can be found on the Unity Theatre website. Anything else anybody wants to add?
No, just to say thank you to the Unity as well for being our partner, being our partner on this, and and we're really, really pleased to be having the premiere here.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really kind of insightful discussion, and best of luck with everything that you're doing. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So thank you so much to everybody who's watched as well. To find out more about the Roundtable series, you can head over to the Unity website. We'll be discussing a broad range of topics, things like TikTok and how that's affected the stand-up comedy industry, how people have kind of responded to the pandemic. We'll also be taking a deep dive into the kind of representation of Liverpool as a city across art forms. And the next one we have coming up is around grief and healing through art. So head over and take a look, and thank you so much for joining us.